Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining the broadcast this evening. Apologies to all, as I put in the comments. I have a slight technical issue this evening. I do have audio from Prof, but we are having a few issues on video. The program will, however, continue. So please bear with us today while the engineers try to address that issue. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, moderator. How are you?
Fine, thank you, sir. I want to apologize for the video situation. We'll see if we can get that on the program before we finish, but if not, apologies on that, sir.
Just as I am looking handsome and well, don't let me add the rest to it. Now you don't show me on video. I'm not competing with you, you know, or with the young ones or the young colleagues on the platform. It's not fair. I took special trouble, comb my hair, and to make myself look presentable.
Yeah, but you know, sometimes whenever technology is there, something always works well, I would say. On that
planes drop from the sky when technology is involved, Abby.
Yes, it does. It does. But we'll come back. We'll come back to that point. We'll come back to that point. Let's start closer home tonight, sir. For the last few weeks, the last few months, everyone had been looking forward to BRICS Summit, what was going to happen with the BRICS Summit. Now the BRICS Summit is here, and there have been quite a few takeaways that we could look at. But I want to start with the points where 6 new countries have been invited. And I was scrambling, looking through the list, hoping that I would find a country that starts with N. And I didn't find that. I was very surprised. And I thought that would be the first question I'd be putting to you this evening, sir. Where is the giant of Africa? Or is the giant no longer a giant?
Now it's my turn to ask you for forgiveness and permission to make a few preliminary comments before I get to BRICS. And the comments are on the recently concluded.
Bear with me, sir. Tim, can you please mute everybody?
Yes.
Go ahead, sir. Can you please mute yourself if you're not already on mute, everyone? Thank you, sir. Go ahead, sir. Sorry about that, sir.
Thank you. The Women or Female World Cup has come and gone. And I congratulate the winner. In fact, I congratulate all the participants in that tournament. However, I must point out that there is politics, international politics, in even football. And nothing better shows it than the This is not a jingoistic analysis of the Female World Cup. But I think it's both the deaf and the dumb and the blind who see that the officiating of the Nigerian-British match was just below par. I mean, the bias against the Nigerian team was evident. First of all, she gives a penalty against Nigeria. Thank God she was overruled by VAR. Then, right there on the field, our girl in the box, in the penalty box, was not only pushed to the ground, you could see how her legs were interfered with. And she ignored it. Absolutely, she ignored it. And the VAR this time did not intervene. Thirdly, you could see when Alozie, our player, was stamped upon viciously by the English player. And all the referee produced was a yellow card until the VAR overruled her. That, hey, this was a vicious thing that could have inflicted grievous injury on Alozie. It was then she produced a red card. And even after she did that, it was like Nigeria was playing against the English team and the referee. And yet, when you listen to commentaries, and this is where I'm going, when you listen to commentaries, since we were dependent on commentaries, the studio was in South Africa. There were no Nigerian commentators. It was the three or the four were all South Africans. Nobody really made any reference, no song and dance about the way the Nigerian team, female team, the bias against them in the field. And of course, if you listen to the British commentators, it was all Britain forever. Nothing about, and if what was done to the Nigerian team had been done to the English team, I'm sure by now we will be at war with Britain and Navy. So this shows that sports is not just sports. We've gone past the age where we can talk about, oh, it's only a game. It's only football. It's no longer just a game. And Nigeria itself should now really, as part of its diplomacy, invest heavily in sports development, which must include an independent studio, so that for these international matches, we also will have paid to have our own independent commentary team that can then raise the alert to the world the way we were being treated. Spain had its own independent commentary team. I'm sure the Italians did, and I'm definitely sure the Americans did. So don't let us, number one, depend on South African studio anymore. Some of us still need to be weaned away from African brotherhood. Comrade this, comrade that. That is long dead. I thought I should start this week by saying that by bringing this to our attention, because there are several people on our platform who have probably, access to different levers of government, and who can bring this to their attention. I thank you for being indulgent with me and letting me start with that. Now, to go to BRICS. I had raised an alert about 2 weeks ago when South Africa announced that it was inviting all African nations to come and be on the sideline cheering on Ramaphosa's performance. I said this was directed at Nigeria. That to me it was an insult to be invited as part of a crowd. None of the other countries, when they've been having, when they've been hosting the summit, had done this kind of thing. And I had said, I don't think Nigeria should attend. Let our High Commissioner in South Africa or send a special ambassador that it should go. But that if we were interested in actually joining BRICS, the new government it had enough time to put together a task force and go around China, India, Brazil, visiting them and campaigning, lobbying them. I realized that this was a new government that came in and ran into the crisis that's been posed for it by Niger. Had to be dealing with problems of cabinet, composition of cabinet and so on. And so probably didn't really have the time for major issues, foreign policy issues to balance out at the right time. But and I challenged, so this is not just a challenge to me. I challenged members on our platform. I posed a question. Can somebody categorically tell me whether Nigeria had actually applied to be a member of BRICS? Mr. Moderator, you will recall nobody on this platform gave an answer. I'm repeating that challenge, and I know why I'm repeating the challenge. Did we apply to join BRICS or not? The countries that have been invited from Africa to become a member, Ramaphosa just made a fool of himself. Let me put it undiplomatically, unlike me. Ethiopia had just emerged from one civil war, and Ethiopia is involved in another one that is brewing. Number two, Ethiopia has just finished building what's called the Renaissance Dam, which has pitted it against Sudan and Egypt. And both countries have said it was going to be prepared to use force to stop the development of that dam, because it will have implication for their own volume of water River Nile. And so BRICS BRICS invites Ethiopia that may not only be facing a civil war, but sooner or later may be involved in a war of water, or a war on water, with two of his neighbors. One of it had also been invited to join BRICS, and that is Egypt. So, well, what were the yardsticks that were used? What were the yardsticks that were used? It baffles me. I don't know. That's what I want to say about the membership.
Sir, before you go on, sir, could it be that these countries played their foreign policy much better than Nigeria chose to play her foreign policy?
No. We must not put the cart before the horse. Let's throw open this question to our members, starting with the question that I asked. Did we apply to be a member? If we didn't apply to be a member, then you can't say that we were snubbed. But if we applied to be a member, then definitely you can jump to the conclusion that we were snubbed. And then we can now say, why did we lose out? So, but if nobody wants to tell us whether we applied or not, there are several members of the foreign ministry who are on this platform, and several who have friends and colleagues. They should know, they should give us an answer.
All right, should I ask everyone then? Call a friend.
Yes.
50-50 or let's call someone, find out, did Nigeria apply to be a member of BRICS? I am seeing no comments in the chat at this point in time, and I can certainly see some smiling faces on here who probably know the answer to the question, sir. But with no comments on here, I will not want to assume what the answer is to that question.
Okay.
Yes, sir. But we're throwing it.
Then can we open up? Can we extend the analysis? I didn't see a friend of India or a colleague of it. Sorry. Yes.
Sorry, sir. I think I can see someone trying to unmute themselves. Let me just make sure that they can do that. Please unmute yourself, Professor, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I'm saying that Ambassador Igali is on the platform. He should be in a better position to educate us on this particular matter. Have we really applied? Because we do not have any information. And with Buhari, it cannot be rightly argued that we had any policy. We had a foreign policy that is not even known by anybody. We do not know who actually is doing what. Ambassador Igali should help us. We should answer Professor Akinyemi's question first before we find alternative interpretations to it. Ambassador Igali, please.
Prof, I think you are dressing me in borrowed robes because I've been out of the system. We've all left the ministry for some time, and I'm afraid most of the members on this platform I've left the ministry for some time. But that notwithstanding, we belong to different platforms where these issues of foreign policy, from the point of view of those of us who are in the ministry, are regularly discussed. And I remember in one of them, this question that Prof asked had come up, whether we've applied, and the same kind of mute answer was what we obtained. So I do not think, I'm just speaking from the top of my head, I do not think that Nigeria has made a formal application to join. But I'm happy that my colleague Shola Nikolai is here. Perhaps maybe we'll find out and elucidate at our next meeting. But let me say so. Sir, please respectfully, can we also maybe ask conversely, did Ethiopia and Egypt formally apply? Does anybody have information? Did they apply? Do we know if they applied? Or they were merely invited to apply? I think I'll leave it at that. Perhaps somebody will provide answer to this second question. But we'll take home what you've asked. And I think we'll approach the ministry to tell us, give us an answer. Because it's going to be a big question of national debate in the next few days. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Ambassador Igali. I never even heard the name of Ethiopia at all during all the debate that led to this summit. So you are quite right to have answered, to have raised that issue. I believe now that you know, when you look at the American system and you look at the Council on Foreign Relations, the members there sniff around within the State Department when issues arise. Not only that, members of the State Department also drop hints. So their former colleagues about, you know, the trend of views in the State Department. And I think that we, you know, after 60 years of experience foreign policy-wise, Nigerians should also now, let us hope, will get to that level where we trust each other with information. Because as Ambassador Igali said, given, for example, some of the comments that I have even read since this announcement was made, there are Nigerians who are going to say we've been insulted. They don't have the information whether we applied or not. They will assume we applied and that we were turned down. And since nobody really has the information, nobody can rise to the defense, not of the government of the day. Governments come, governments go. It's like soldiers come, soldiers go. Barracks remain. Governments come, governments go. Nigeria remains. And it is Nigeria who will be rising to defend. You know, our colleagues abroad, we are going to go to conferences where we are going to run into people who are going to confront us. What happened? You know, were you people not interested? Or are you, you know, this issue will be raised. So I think that all of us have a responsibility to put our ear to the ground in the ministry on the basis of confidentiality. And people who are in the ministry, even though they are not on this platform, since they are serving civil servants, should also, there are people who can be trusted with information. Ambassador Igali, thinking of this and of that. What do you think? Can you sniff around? What do people think? Professor Akinyemi, while your colleagues, can you sniff around? What do they think? Because when they, as Americans will say, when they watch my colleague hit the fan, it's going to blow into all our faces. Let's face it.
All right, sir. Thank you for that. But let me move the conversation forward slightly. I can see some comments where people are saying they would certainly approach the ministry for that information. But let's look at the composition, sir. Iran, Saudi Arabia, Argentina, Egypt. Is this now really turning to BRICS not just being a voice of the global South, but now this is turning into an anti-West organization? And I know that they said in one of the reports I read that, yes, they're thinking about a currency, but the idea is not to move away from the dollar, but to look for something that works and fits the interest of member countries. But with Iran, with Saudi Arabia, China, Russia, what do you think of the selection of countries that have now been invited to BRICS? And to what extent would those countries change the narrative within BRICS?
Well, I think the narrative has just become even more complex. It's one thing, number one, I cannot, I think we raised today's, if you recall, last week. And actually, Ambassador Akinyemi came in with his intervention. I cannot regard BRICS now as the voice of the global South. I must repeat myself. It's one thing to have a list of grievances that prima facie justify a new organization and which will be in the interest of the global South. A more acceptable currency that will dilute the influence of the dollar. And the dollar never used to be the currency of international trade. It used to be the gold. It was Nixon and Kissinger who unilaterally abolished the gold standard and said it was going to be the dollar. And that had consequences for all of us. Now, if a new mechanism were to be brought back, which will restore, if you like, the gold standard or a neutral standard, even though the dollar will still be there. Yes, the dollar will have to find its value vis-a-vis the gold, just as, the naira will have to find its value vis-a-vis the gold and everything. I am for that. But my problem is calling Russia and China, voice of the global South. If you look at the behavior of Russia, if you look at the behavior of Russia and China in the economic affairs of Africa, please, I challenge people to disagree with me on this. I don't find the exploitative activities of China and Russia to be that of any better than the exploitative activities of the West. I know we may get on to discuss the Wagner Group, but is the Wagner Group behaving any better than there was this private militia that the Americans, is it the Black Rod or something, used in Iraq, that also performed atrociously, such atrocities. That is there. There is the executive, something that even the South African private militia that at one time we used in our fight against Boko Haram. It's there. So really, if for anybody looking at the activities of Russia and China, to regard them as voice of the global South, I have problems with that. And now, speaking from personal experience, I have problems with regarding Iran as the voice of the global South. The use of religion by Iran, even in countries of the global South, is nothing to write home about. I recall, and Ambassador Igali will also recall this, a ship carrying arms was caught in Nigerian waters and detained. When it was boarded, it was found loaded with arms, and they said they were on their way to Senegal. We didn't buy the story. So people were arrested on the boat. One ended up with a diplomatic passport, and he was immediately, of course, released. The other one was tried, found guilty, and jailed. When I knew all of this, because I was serving on a committee at that time, we then asked to meet this fellow, this Iranian who's been jailed. And we were told he'd been released to a delegation, an official delegation from Iran. And my question was, released on whose authority? It turned out that President Jonathan said he didn't want any problem with Iran. And so he ordered him to be released to the Iranian delegation. Now, excuse me, it means that ship with its full load of weapons was actually meant for Nigeria. It wasn't going to any Senegal. And look at the way Iran treated us. Did it treat us better than the Americans would have treated us? Now it is going to be a member of BRICS. I just believe that looking at the new compilation, the last thing I want is, as I said last week, the last thing I want is for Nigeria to be pegged now automatically in an anti-Western, in an anti-Western organization. That when we then go to the UN or any international organization for that matter, and we have to vote, members of BRICS will not be regarded to show loyalty to the group. I think we are bigger than that. I think we are bigger than that. And when we sort out our economy, because as Clinton said, is the economy stupid? When we sort out our economy and we start behaving like Turkey, develop, an industrial military complex, stop the leakage in our oil, extensively exploit our gas. Look, our economy will actually will be close to the kind of economy of India and so on. And I might add this. With the Indian achievement on landing that rocket on the moon, if Nigeria had continued on the trajectory it was when we were practicing true federalism, believe me, there are at least 2 regions that probably will be competing in rocketry rather than where we are now. So the capability of Nigeria is limitless. We just need to get our act together.
Thank you, sir. I can see a hand was raised earlier. Again, like I've said, and I always say on the program, please pardon me. I do not know all the names or all the people. So, but this name is Bode Olajumoke.
Senator Olajumoke.
Okay, Senator, sorry, sir. Can you please unmute yourself, sir? Senator, can you unmute yourself, sir? All right. I think we'll try and get him back. Sir, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you.
No, I mean the senator, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir. All right, we'll come back. We'll come back to the senator. But if you raise your hand again once you've unmuted yourself, sir, and I see you, I would call you again, sir. So thank you for that. The points around potentially seeing Nigeria as the risk of seeing Nigeria as an anti-Western organization. But one of the points that also struck me, sir, from the tone that the Chinese president gave from the speech that was read on his behalf, the fact that now everyone is calling for the expansion of BRICS. Where do you think BRICS may expand to? And now that the composition, as you've rightly identified, sir, is now maybe no longer the voice of the global South, where do you think this is expanding to, sir? Where do you see it going?
I don't know. This was where I was going to raise the issue that I don't see anybody that India is sponsoring into that group. I don't see anybody that China is sponsoring into that group. And I dare say I don't see anybody that Brazil is sponsoring into that group, although I know Argentina is being invited. But Argentina and Brazil are competitors in South America. So really, in what direction is the expansion going? I don't see anybody that even Russia is sponsoring, into that group. I would have thought maybe Russia will be sponsoring Turkey. But then maybe Turkey is not interested in joining BRICS. Our interrogation of this issue of BRICS really is going to need extensive discussion to now know why would they have two from Africa, one from South America, and if you like, two from, is it the Middle East?
Yes, Iran and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we have...
Go ahead.
I think we have Senator Bolaji Akinyemi back. Can you unmute yourself, sir? I'll send you a message now. Can you unmute yourself now, sir?
My goodness.
Okay. I think we can hear you now, sir.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Well, I actually support the position of Professor Akinyemi that Nigeria, we don't need to. In the past, since independence, we adopted this principle of non-aligned. Why should we get ourselves involved by, joining a bloc that will, be opposing the West? Not that the West has done that much for Africa. I happen to have I spent about 4 years in the USSR, and I mean my experiences in the Soviet Union is nothing to write home about. Yes, they assisted us. We had free scholarship there. I went from from Moscow to Edinburgh. There was, I mean, the two powers are just almost the same in terms of their relationship with developing nations. I would rather, especially in these hard times, I would rather we remain non-aligned. We don't have the resources to counter the West. Neither do we have the resources to counter the any new bloc. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Prof. Akinyemi, do you want to respond to that, sir?
No, I agree. I agree with Senator Lajumoke. Because you see, even at the risk of repeating myself, do the national interests of each one of members of BRICS, we will now say BRICS plus, are they really coterminous? The national interests of India in global affairs, are they the same as the global interests of Russia? Are they the same as the global interests of Iran? Are they the same as the global interests of Ethiopia, for example? Unless you just want a woolly organization like the United Nations, but that instead of being controlled by the West, will be controlled by the East. So it will be an Amulu Mala kind of organization with various interests, and but your main objective will be to confront the West. Is that what BRICS is going to become? that scholars are going to have a field day. I wish I were a professor still teaching in the university. I'll get one of my PhD students to take this on BRICS so far.
Okay, sir. I can see Professor Akinyemi's hands raised. Prof, I'll come back to you in a minute. If you can unmute yourself in the meantime. But there is a comment here from Ambassador Obishaki, where he says, from Prof's caveat that Nigeria not be tagged anti-West, what alternative does Nigeria have to promote the voice of the global South? That Nigeria has a legitimate claim as an African hegemony. Are we to revive non-aligned movements? This compared with strengthening our economy, similar to India. And then there was another comment from Ambassador Igali here that Nigeria doesn't need to tag along other countries despite our internal circumstances. So echoing the same sentiment there from Ambassador Igali. But sir, the question I think is on the minds of a lot of people before I come to Professor Akinyemi is, what options do we have? What can Nigeria do, knowing that we were not in the first batch of BRICS, we're not in the second batch of countries to join BRICS? What now? Can we stand alone? Nigeria stand alone as a country?
No, well, first of all, let me say, maybe the time is right for another new push, another initiative for the concert of medium power. When India landed that rocket on the south pole of the moon, it struck me, one old professor, and when I say old, I'm probably older than he is, but he looked older than me because there was no hair left on his head, said, this is a major achievement for a middle power. And that struck me. That struck me. Coming from that professor, I think he teaches at King's College, London, somewhere like that. So maybe time is right for a new push. But before we make that push, look, let's spend the next 3 years. As I keep saying on this platform, thank God we are not a banana republic. The resources are there. It's a question of leadership, organizing ourselves. Given my own personal interest, I would have liked to have a whole minister, dedicated to aerospace under the control of the president. We must have a space program ourselves. India spent $78 million on this rocket to the moon, this particular one. $78 million. That's how much you will spend on on how many senators in Nigeria. But that's what it costs them, this particular one. Because people are going to try to say we can't afford it. We can afford it. People stop stealing money, public money. We can afford it.
All right, sir. Professor Akinyemi, can you please unmute yourself and go ahead with your comments, sir?
Yeah, okay. Yes. I want to react to Senator Bode Olajumoke's point on non-alignment. And I also want to provide a possible way forward to your question. You said Nigeria cannot stand alone. What can we do? What should be the way forward? Professor Akinyemi has directly pointed to the need for a new organization. You see, the BRICS, the way it has been conceived, I remember having drawn attention to it in the past here on this platform, is concert of medium powers in a new form. And in this particular case, as Senator Olajumake and Ambassador Igali also said, there is no need for us to seek to be joining, I don't want to say bandwagon group, all those things. You see, we should be talking about a new concert of medium powers, which will again be initiated by Nigeria. And I'm only pleading with you and with Prof. Akinyemi to devote one session on this idea of a new concert of medium powers. And then let there be another group of think tanks, on this, so that in the future, BRICS can exist with South Africa playing active parts there. Then Nigeria, in the way we were not actually at loggerheads, the Casablanca group and the Monrovia group, we may have that two groups here in Africa again, the functional groups. Now on Senator Olajumake's point, I do not think that Nigeria, we said, we will not be aligned. Generally, many observers, including scholars, appear to me to have misunderstood that principle, either as espoused on August 20, 1960, or October 7 at the UN, 1960. What Tafawa Balewa said about non-alignment is that we can align, we can choose to align, we can choose not to be aligned, but that alignment decision should be informed by Nigeria's national interest as at the time, the decision is taken. He did say that we will not foolishly or carelessly, we would not be blind, we will not close our eyes to all these things. So let everyone take that particular statement to go and read it. So if, for instance, we align, I remember many scholars said, well, why were we opposed to the Easterners, Eastern Europeans, especially when it came to the issue of issuance of diplomatic place? The Easterners were refused. And the explanation that was given was made clear that, look, here, when it is in Nigeria's interest, we will align. When it is not, we will not. But the principle of non-alignment does not mean non-alignment, that is categorical opposition. We need to get that one clear. So in this particular case, as much as I agree with Senator Olajumake and Ambassador Igali that, look, we should not be part of BRICS. Why should we even be part of BRICS? What prevents Nigeria standing alone? And then, it's always very funny when we say a tree does not make a forest. It's a common saying. A tree does not make a forest. How do we explain the fact that 99 people will vote at the Security Council and one veto will neutralize it? I think we need to begin to reflect on all these obstacles. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I do have a challenge to throw out there. I can see some comments that I will come to in a second, but I do have a challenge to throw out. I think the current BRICS countries already represent, is it not 40% of global economic output? And it feels to me that Nigeria choosing to stand alone, while I am not putting Nigeria down, I believe fully in that country, but we already have the anti-West sentiment. And to what extent can Nigeria alone now drive the economic wealth that will bring other countries to then want to align with Nigeria and to be a force that can contend with BRICS, not just BRICS, but like Prof said, BRICS plus. By the time you add BRICS plus to that equation, that percentage is already probably closer to 50% of world economic output. Dr. Dakbo Thomas, can you please go ahead?
Well, I think I want to, first of all, let us clear the definition of concert of medium powers. And because I want to believe that Donald Lee, the author of Middle Powers and Commercial Diplomacy, does not believe that they mean the same thing. I know it was Professor Bolaji Akinyemi that came up with that position, but it does not actually have this kind of universal acceptability, possibly because of narrow indices or parameters of definition.
8:00 p.m.
She even groups Britain under middle powers. And I'm so sure Prof did not bring Britain under concert of medium powers. So there is a kind of dialectical difference in these two positions. Middle powers, concert of medium powers. I think if we are clear about what these two, about the definitions of these two, we'll be able to know whether Iran, India, and these other nations fall into the category of this concept. But, you know, again, you also have a situation where you have Russia and China. These are nations that are not in the concert of medium powers. So I think we are just being too liberal, or I don't know whether I should use the word generous, or I don't really know what to use, because if we have two major powers or two great powers in an organization, and we are still calling them concert of medium powers or abridged version of concert of medium powers or middle powers, I do not also believe that even those people coming up with this BRICS idea also know what they actually want. And I want to support the position of the moderator when he said that anti-West posturing, you know, because I think that is just the idea, but they have not stated it clearly. And it is when all these nations that are being invited, when they now see that there is no clear definition of what their objectives are, by that time, it will be very difficult. I mean, they will now retrace their steps. I was wondering when I saw Nigeria attending, and I said, what for? What for? Why do we have to have this kind of posture? Why do we have to take this kind of position? We don't need them because it's not a defined organization. They still don't understand themselves. They only know that, okay, some of them are aggrieved. Some of them have problems with the dollar. In fact, most of them have problems with the dollarization of the international trade. See, they have that problem. And I think that one is there. Some of them don't even like America. I think they have that problem. And then, obviously, China, Russia are traditional adversaries of US. So there is an amalgam of different countries with different objectives. So I don't still want to know, I don't still want to believe that I have a clear definition, because each time I go through some of their papers and the speeches and everything, I can see these anti-American sentiments. So I don't want us to be bothered about that now. Once as scholars, we are able to tell the government that, look, this thing is not clearly defined, because we don't want to be seen as an anti-West thing, as an anti-West nation. So that, I think that is where we can now be berating them, But for now, let's just keep our fingers crossed. Let's see as things unfold. Let's see how far they can go. If this diversified or divergent views would not, at the end of the day, lead to the collapse of the organization. That's my position.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. In the interest of time, sir, we started off by talking about planes dropping out of the sky due to technological issues. Exactly almost 2 months to the day. The head of the Wagner Group is presumed dead. Obviously, there are so many theories flying around at the moment, but he's presumed dead. And my question, sir, is lots of people are asking the question, who's behind it? But also, what does this mean for Africa and all the countries that had put their hopes in the Wagner Group? And the third question is, what does this mean for Niger? They were really banking on the Wagner Group coming to their aid. What does it mean for them? Professor Akinyemi, sir.
Well, they say when beggars die, no comets are seen, but the heavens themselves proclaim the death of princes. Obviously, the princes could be evil princes, good princes, princes of all kinds of denominations. For the past 36 hours or so now, we've been talking about nothing else but the death of the Wagner leader. All international media have devoted mostly their programs to that issue, to his death. And Mr. Model, when you say presumed death, no. Putin has finally given the confirmation when he has sent messages of condolence to the families. And this kind of backhand praise for contribution of I can never pronounce the name, forgive me. So I always just call him the leader, or the Wagner leader. Now, before I answer directly your question of what does this mean for Africa and what does this mean for Niger, let me say we will never, this is going to be one of those, we will never have an answer as to who did it. If we use the analysis of who benefits from his death, we probably will have about 20. And to let you know how problematic that can be, that 20 will include ECOWAS. It will include Nigeria because of his planned movement into Niger. So he has a lot of enemies. Now, we could shrink that category into who has the capability, the capacity to either plant the bomb on the plane or to bring the plane down. And that shrinks considerably the group. And we would then never know. Among those who have the capability, we can grade the usual suspects, suspect number 1, number 2, number 3, or whoever, So It's, but part of this again, which brings us to what we were talking about earlier. Propaganda had come into it. What is the Wagner Group that is it the Black Hawk Group, the American Black Hawk Group, was not doing in Iraq? The United States has private militia that it uses where it doesn't want the boots of its soldiers on the ground. But when Wagner does it, it's bad. When the Black Hawk people, or whatever they call themselves, do it, that is all right. The executive, whatever it is that operate, these are former apartheid soldiers in South Africa. They are also out for hire, and we have hired them, as I said some minutes ago, in Nigeria to help us fight Boko Haram. But you see, because we are playing the propaganda game, the ideological propaganda game, all the Western media demonizes the Wagner Group. Of course, they're a bunch of mercenaries, hooligans in army uniform. So let's not beat about the bush. I don't defend them. I wouldn't want them rampaging around in my country because they are ill-disciplined. As long as they are paid, they are ill-disciplined. So I'm not sanitizing the image of the Wagner Group, just as I won't sanitize the image of any of this private militia. The French have private militia. They are the Foreign Legion. Why would you need to have, private militia within your organization if it comes to that? Also, all these countries do, and I recall someone was making reference to Great Britain and so on. I mean, they have the what's the name of this group that they get from Nepal? That is, quote, part of the British Army, unquote. So they are also there. They're not Britons. They're not English people. So, but because especially the Wagner Group has been demonized, that is why the death of that.
The Gawkers.
The Gawkers, thank you.
Yes, from Wale Laditon. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, thank you, Wale. Yeah, the Gawkers. Yeah, there you are. So now I think that after the attempted mutiny, the Russian army had actually put into place plans to take command and control of the Wagner groups operating, or whether it was in Belarusia or in Ukraine or in Africa. I don't know to what extent they have succeeded, but bear in mind that most of the soldiers in the Wagner group have actually served in the Russian army and either have retired or have left because there was too much discipline, or they were not being paid on time. And you now have this, the Wagner leader who they knew had the support of the Kremlin, and they will get paid on time. And if they are not paid on time, they can loot the treasuries of wherever it is, they are fighting. So the problem this poses then for African leaders, for Mali, for Burkina Faso, for the Central African Republic, is to what extent would Russia give them the free hand that they had under their dead leader? That is question one, which we will have to interrogate and watch. Number two, to what extent would they be in sync with the policies of the African countries where they occupy as of now? I think it will be a tragedy if Africans exchange French neocolonialism for Russian neocolonialism. Anyone who is familiar with our experience with the iron and steel industry in Ajaokuta, which was under the control of the Soviet Union, will know that, again, I mean, it's so funny. Russian food was being flown in from Moscow for Russian, workmen who were working there. Ordinary carpenters nailing nails into whatever that Nigerians could do. The Russians, as part of the agreement, said no, they have to fly in their own men to be knocking nails into wood. So it was a neo-colonial experience for us. So it will be, as I said, to be a tragedy for us to exchange one neo-colonial experience for another. Obviously, there will be a lot of apprehension in Niger today because the Russians may not be prepared to be as reckless as this dead leader in moving into new areas and new territories without proper planning. So I don't expect to see Russian boots on the ground in Niger. I don't expect to see that. So this is a breathing ground for diplomacy perhaps to still work in Niger.
Excellent. So I'll ask you one last question. I know we are a little over time. One last question. ECOWAS rejected the transition plan from the coup plotters in Niger. Was that a right move?
Yes, it was. Okay, both sides are playing the game of chicken. The game of chicken. When I was teaching games theory as part of the mechanism for conflict resolution, I used to tell the students about the game of chicken. Two cars facing each other, revving the engines, putting the gear into first something, and you are hoping that somebody will blink and that it shouldn't be you, that it will be the other guy. Until that moment when you're about to crash into each other and then one veers left. You pray that somebody veers left, but you also pray that both of you don't veer left at the same time, so that maybe if one veers left, the other veers right. But there are dangers to that. So what I think is still happening is they're playing the game of chicken. They are going to see who's going to blink first. They are going to see who, because as part of the process, the sanctions are still in place. That's number one. Number two, which I'm not encouraging, but if I were a general, I will welcome. If I were an ECOWAS general, I will welcome. The French are playing devious. They are the ones who are releasing weapons into the jihadists, the ISIS, even the internal opposition among the Tuaregs to fight the central government. It is the French who are engineering that. But what it means is the coupists have to keep one eye looking at ECOWAS, one eye looking at the internal dissension within Niger itself. And the hope on the part of ECOWAS is somewhere along the line, and not too soon, they will come to the conclusion that they cannot win this game against ECOWAS, and therefore really serious, negotiation will then start. They will come from 3 years to 1.5 years. ECOWAS will still say no. So who knows? To 1 year, ECOWAS will still say no. But they then start to talk about 9 months. We will release the old president. We will let him go into exile, maybe in Nigeria, maybe in Cote d'Ivoire. You know, that kind of thing that shows what we want you to do is restoration of democracy. But I hope that also ECOWAS leaders will be telling France, this is not your game. If we get these people to agree to restoration of democracy, you yourself have to pack and leave Niger. Quid pro quo. I hope so.
Thank you very much, sir. We've run out of time. I know there are still some comments that are coming in, but we'll continue the conversation next week. I'm sure there will be more developments from BRICS. There would also be more developments in Russia. I can see a comment from somebody talking about potentially being another leader rising up within the Wagner Group. Time will tell, but 1 week is a long time in international affairs. We'll be back same time next week. Good night, everyone. Good night, sir.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.